Welcome to the Chronicles of Vone. This is the first trilogy of his tales, titled The Wraith Redress. Created by two brothers with the surname of Page. Composed by my elder kin, John. Written and narrated by Joe. It's a pleasure to greet you. This story takes place within the tabletop role-playing game of Project FullBlade. Project FullBlade is geared to be a rebellious, fast-paced, combat-heavy experience. The cross-powering system will allow you to create a beam between character and caster types, distinct traits, weapon skills, class abilities, and constructing your spellbook. Magic has its role in all people of Tellus. Each player can craft their persona exactly how they want it to be. Companions who may choose the same class as you will end up being vastly different by the time your adventure begins. Project remains in the title because this is an endless task, an unbound tome. An RPG that will forever grow with its residents. We will experiment with this together. If you would like to become part of this world or have thoughts to share, please email us at party@projectfullblade.com. What is your stance on the riddle of death? The trepidation of darkness pressures the mind into creating the afterlife. One with a reasonable end to an existence full of purpose. But no matter how we pray to the totems or simplify the inevitable, we cannot conceive this path until it is tread. I have faced one man who knows death well, but at the cost of his mortal life. A Wraithsayer from the port town of Land's End. Destined to release the innocent souls trapped within their unwarranted takings. An eternal man, vigorously kept at his peak from the untainted energy that possess his spirit. I, Redrin, am the record keeper of Vone. And this is the Wraith Redress. North of the mountainous stockade of Zenestra, on the militant roads of war, an unexpected battle takes place between my liberator and the warlord son of Vanadium. The constant exchange of power and dominion for the continent of Aolaos has taken many lives. Not just of soldiers bred for the fight or the deprived who are incentivized into the struggle, but those who lived above the violence. A soul who cannot accept their misfortune is faced with a choice: to condense their hatred of this world, a mindful decision to reject all forgiveness until they destroy their path back to enlightenment. The other is to accept a full embrace of peace, no matter how wrongful the act. To recognize that the planet of Tellus gives birth to the opportunity of life by cleansing vitality and catalyzing it into new being. The balance is forever tilted, and through its desperation, it seems Tellus has created Vone, the torchlight that seeks the abundance of lost spirits. This battle of Stone Targe by the great mountainside is where Vone felt his first glint of his true impetus, concurrent to his descent into a new world of turmoil.
Looks like this day won't be so boring after all. Looks like we get to eliminate this brackish renegade! We are the sons of Enadium, protectors of this land and its people! We are the greater good! Our brothers bring hope into the eyes of war, and you think by killing them will make this land more jovial? You are the traitor! That's right, traitors don't deserve my trail! You will be detained and publicly executed with the rest of the smut that act on ignoring our claims. Do you hear me, fell speaker?
His axe is mine.
Erlo, I'll take his place.
The essence that guide Vone has never led to a clearer path than it does now. This is the first time he has seen Erlo, but felt the wake of his destruction for many months. Vone had just fought their mounted men, Vanadium soldiers who ride creaturous beasts, large mongrel miscreations they called Gellerts. He had little choice but to invoke the Wraith, and they were briskly and brutally torn apart. But the power of the Wraith is quick to deplete, and a creation spell of preservation was enacted before the warlord could step within reach. The domed walls of the incantation have granted sanctuary from combatants, however, he is surrounded. He looks at Maxilla, the hooked axe in his right hand. The tips of the double-bladed weapon have been hammered down and wedded to the overbite of fangs. Fangs that have torn apart the flesh of evil for over 100 years. He seeks the retribution on Erlo's aim of genocide, forcing his allegiance across lines of unwilling, unarmed people of trade. His eyes shift left to Mandible, 5 feet of bloodied blade now showing gleams of steel as it drinks the carnage dry. Vone takes off the accursed cloak he used to down the brutes. Its magic is expended. The blue radiance has dimmed, presenting its usual color of flat white. It comforts him to know that
if I die today, at least one will be tormented with this claim.
He stares at the mysterious mantle for another moment. Vone looks up to seek out his marks. 5 men in proximity, including Erlo, and a fleet of archers in a half-built fortification they erected by the mountain pass. He feels the clawing in his gut from the dead residents within. The anxiety for revenge assure Vone's credence he must succeed. In return, this feeds the thought of victorious retribution back to the ghost inside. Their desires are synced, his senses are keen, both weapons are poised out front.
Erlo!
The bantering stopped. They took to their circled positions.
I will be speaking with your corpse to remind you why you failed in your subjugation.
The concentration of the barrier dissipates. It falls simultaneously with the first long lunge into combat. The Sons of Vanadium proceed closing in, but blood has already spilt. Vone, dashing backwards within a breath's reach of the adjacent antagonist, drops low and pivots his hips to wedge Mandible across, slicing the abdomen open from hilt to tip. The long bastard sword ate through the protected ribcage, stopped just short of licking the spine. Already positioned for the next full swing, he raises his axe high as if it were a beacon warning the final moments of life. The Vanadium Knight saw his death materialize and could only think to put up his shield and hope for his ally to intervene. Maxilla comes crashing down, spinning it to its teeth right before it connects. The weapon latches onto the rim of the shield and fiercely disarms the defender, throwing it back into the face of the flanking soldier. His footing is switched to bring the axe into a turning backhand blow, pounding it into the head of his second kill. Eyes watered over from the broken nose, the last of the frontline trio takes a desperate stab at Vone, but Mandible has another drink as it parries and penetrates into the armpit of the assailant. His long leg reaches up past the chest and boots the enemy, twisting the sword free. He digests in the adrenaline of the dying men, but grimaces when no souls were released. They did not have the same heart nor committed the same acts as their leader. Before Vone can turn to face Erlo and the last henchman, he hears the whistling of arrows. In desperation, he holds his weapons up to protect his head. An arrow sinks into his right shoulder. Another is lodged in the muscled webbing between his thumb and forefinger. He strives to keep his axe within grip, but cannot. The clang of the heavy weapon seemed louder than the armored guard that also fell from the volley.
Get up, you wretch! Unreliable dog!
Vone channels his arcane knowledge into a massive wall of constant wind, as tall as the scouts keep touching the tops of the surrounding trees. The archers release their second strafe, but the arrows are misdirected under the pressure of the forming wall.
Enough of this play! I will bring the judgment myself!
Erlo rushes in. He takes a wide swipe with the triple chain weapon strong enough to sever the air. Mandible on the defense blocks two of the spike cylinders, but the third swats under, bypassing the blade and striking the already wounded shoulder. Vone tries to backpedal and find a stance of retaliation, but Erlo stays close. The onslaught of attacks is becoming more difficult to intercept. Besides a few nicks and kicks, he cannot obtain the opportunity to deliver the death blow. Erlo smugs with confidence. He has toyed with many opponents in his barrage. To spot an opening, he must first understand their route of defense. Recognizing the tactic for what it is, Vone studies the eyes until they flash a telling sign of the next strike. He prepares for the aversion and is ready to counterattack and end this conflict. Erlo propels his flail exactly as predicted. The menacing weapon is dodged and the weight of the swing has left his chest exposed for a clean strike to the heart. Vone seizes the opportune moment and jolts the blade forward, but the arm does not move. The chains of the weapon have somehow linked to the crossguard and forte of Mandible, and with a mighty pull, it is ripped and flung into the high grass of their arena. The large hand of the warlord slaps down on his ringmail, and he is lifted from his feet and thrown in the opposite direction of where his sword sets. The sound of arrows fall once again. Archers have made their way up trees that give them lead above the wind. Still on the ground with no new wounds, Vone collects his cunning to find a way to deter the bowman and begins chanting a spell of destruction. Parallel along the wall of wind, weaving into the trees and around the keep, small sparks begin to crackle in the air. The ascended Vanadium Rangers stare at the dazzling dance. The rallying snaps get louder and hotter. The air feels pressured. Bursts of flames begin to pop into existence, growing and fading from the nearby gusts. Then the submitting winds are dominated by the rains of fire. A matching wall of flame erupts into a perfect storm of infernal rage. The archers plummet into the jaws of a burning death. Erlo stands amazed by this man's power. His warrior pride naturally gives respect for challengers who meet or surpass his own levels. Scratching the giant scar across the back of his neck, he gives a moment to allow Vone to stand.
Look at what you're capable of! Monsters like you belong in our family. We rule the weak to force their search for inner strength. Power is what it takes to birth power. Those who choose not to meet it succumb to the ones that do, like us.
We are not the same.
A killer is a killer. Only fools believe in their justified tales. Now be dead.
Erlo takes heavy steps towards Vone. His left foot digs into the ground as his massive body turns. He grabs the great flail with both hands, drops his shoulders, and swings. 3 slams to the rib cage, and it shatters under the pressure of the iron columns. Before gravity takes the flail, Vone's arm drops around the chains. His injured palm is forced into Erlo's neck, arrow tip puncturing the windpipe. His eyes widen in shock, paralyzed at the realization of his defeat. A stuttering recollection of his mind brought him back to the weapon still engaged. He could kill his murderer before the passing. Erlo attempts to pull his flail free, but Vone tucks each link tightly and they begin struggling. Spurting blood from both wounds grease the grip of the squeezing hand. The last surge of fight inside the warlord begins to take over. Vone tightens his siege as much as he could and jumps both legs up to the breastplate of his foe and kicks off, ripping the arrow clean, putting space between them to avoid his final stand. Erlo falls to his knees, grabbing his spewing neck. A bobbing head begins to hang lower, but his body does not fall as he slowly dies on the plains of Stone Targe. Before the pain sets too deep, he pulls the arrow free from his hand and falls back into the grassy bed. Fighting to remain conscious, he turns to the mountain and watches the firestorm burn thick clouds of smoke all around. Vone's skin begins to twitch. He feels the flowing wave of pure ecstasy. Something he has not felt in this last decade. A vast reservoir of souls that have found peace. The weight in his heart is heavy with both sorrow and joy. He sees the eyeless figures turn to him, kiss him, touch his wounds to slightly mend him. Disobedient tears sneak through. The planet is more whole, and somewhere in the world, new life will spring forth. He clears his thoughts to focus on the Genergos. He does not notice that his hand is no longer bleeding. The torso is melded back into figure. He only cares about saying his goodbye. Eyes break open, hazed over with fear. He tries to crawl to his weapons, but the half-recovered body is still writhing in agony. His pupils narrow in as he sees Erlo's rattling corpse.
How is he alive? He can't be.
A strange sense of uneasiness consumes Vone, a perception he has never felt. His refined instincts scream to him, this energy is demonic. He tries to stand.
You have lost this fight. Stay down. By your own principle, make peace with your weakness and yield to your superior.
Flesh expands until it bursts. The corpse slops to the floor, deflating, blood pouring from each cuff of the plated gear. This event cannot go ignored. Vone decides to return home from a 30-year voyage to seek the writings of Aolaos, a forgotten invoker who studied how to perceive the energy of demons. Aolaos was often dismissed by the townsfolk as unhinged. Her iconic fable tells of a conversation with a demon alone in the darkness of night by the black shore of Land's End. The words it spoke were filled with irrecoverable history, ancient knowledge of otherworldly magic that Tellus has took away from its offspring. Her heart was submerged in mystery. Aolaos' search for more compelling secrets soon led to the growth of intimacy. They fell into the coitus that consumed the half-year and produced one child that no one has ever seen. Whatever occurred was enough to make her mad. Upon her return, she immediately released her understudies and transformed her life's ambitions into finding out how to reconnect with her child on the other side.
I remember my old pedagogue forewarning me to never enter a discussion with Aolaos. He said,
"The words she mutters will confuse your focus, pervert your mind, and invite you to join her insanity."
This world is never short of insanity.
Vone walks the main road to Deandris Keep, a small fort dedicated to a hero of history who stopped an invading army by associating with the Suns. As he draws near, rolling smog starts to make its way towards him. The stench of scorched skin emits the air. The statues that once reflected icons are dismantled. The gem tower shield doors were pried off and taken. The nostalgia of this once beautiful construction is thinned by the bodies that are being revealed as Vone enters the keep. The women bare and piled together. They wore marks of rope around each limb and seemed to be kept fresh for a while before their throats were slit. The men are charred, still wearing their gear, weapons melted into what's left of their hands. He tries to remove this tragedy from his thoughts and begins to search for any hitching souls.
There are none. Was this linked to Erlo? Did he set the commands in place to murder these people? Vanadium keeps a mutual relationship with Sinestra. Why would they attack their own allies? This is all amiss.
Vone suddenly hears two sets of stumbling steps around the corner of the damaged structure. Needing to be clear of view, soundlessly, he moves against a roofless cottage and unfastens maxilla. He leaps and hooks the high stone wall, rolling up just before their line of vision. Two men, both bearing the sigil of the Vanadium lot, are dragging the remains of a man from a horse-drawn cart.
Could be an ambush they were left behind to swab. They're so young. They don't look the part.
Quit being so gentle. It's not gonna bite you. Pull the damn thing. I am. When will the others arrive? My arms could only handle so much more. Don't question orders. Now stop complaining, or your ride home will be in the back with the stiffs.
Vone starts shifting his body to drop to the other side of the narrow wall. As his attention diverts from the men, he sees the inside of the cottage. Flesh stacked like bricks, accumulating half the room in height. Hundreds of men, women, some in adolescence, with no uniformity between age or allegiance, just the random dead. Vone springs to his feet.
Is this the result of Vanadium loyalty? Why do you keep the dead above ground?
The words were disturbed by a drawing blade.
Whoa, easy. Who are you? Guess we missed one. Thought you can hide from us.
There is no need for weapons. Hasn't this graveyard been soaked in enough blood?
Loaded and dangling off Reese's waist, Roddy notices a hand crossbow and grabs it. He points it up and shoots, but the bolt strikes the wall just under his feet.
Loaded! That was my only warning. Surrender and I'll allow you to keep your life.
Vone's face is longed with annoyance. The hollowing of his cheeks are more distinct. His stare, a portrait of frozen wrath. He drops from the wall. Each step towards the two men slowly increase in tempo. His left hand falls to the pommel of his vicious blade.
Loaded! I'm trying.
The son, more trained for combat, readies his sword, but the other lays down his weapon and tries to mitigate the tension. Roddy puts forth his best strike. Mandible is ripped from its sheath, broadside meeting the blade before the attack could build momentum. His wrist buckles under the shockwave of the union, and his blade takes flight. Vone grabs a man by the shoulder and shoves him into the back of the wagon. The masterwork steel bites into the xiphoid of the man's chest and impales the wagon with such force that the locked wheels tear up streaks in the ground. Vone leaves his sword braced and starts to feed Maxilla both arms of the Cretan.
Stop, please! He's already dead!
Reese falls back in terror. His legs stomp the ground and hopes to push himself away from the annihilation. Vone continues to hack off the legs.
Come here! You didn't mind picking up bodies before. Now load the cart!
Reese gets up and rushes over. His hand rests on the cart as he attempts to catch his breath. The sound of the axe burrowing into the wooded wagon startles the boy, and as he jumps back, he realizes his fingers are still holding on from the knuckles up. Vone grabs his stumpy hand and begins to ignite his palm ablaze. Boiling skin forces wails of pain from the young lad.
If you run, I will kill you. Do you understand?
Ah! Yes! Stop, please!
Vone makes his captive gather 33 corpses. He stakes the bodies upright into a radial shape around the wagon, although it is disproportionate from the recent impairment. Vone bends underneath the disembodied man and draws symbols of his old heritage. Runic inscriptions from the pioneers of Wraithsaying, Intra Mortica, meaning within the dead words. A gift designed to grant a second chance to speak after one is recently deceased.
What is your Tellus name?
It was Roddy, sir.
Vone shoots the man a murderous glare. Reese falls back on his heels and tucks his chin into his neck.
What is your Tellus name?
The sounds of 33 cracking jaws break the quiet. Their sunken eyes snap toward the direction of the suspended body, but the Vanadium sun remains still.
I am Vone, the Seer of Souls. The result of your endeavors has summoned me to relinquish you from this world. As you collapse into the great Genergos, you will learn my reputation from death. Aid me in the planet's request for harmony. I ask again, what is your Tellus name?
The paralyzing chills fall down Reese's spine.
Why have you joined the sun?
cause. To save my land from insurgency. Lies. You join for protection. Power. Profits.
Vone holds his hands up to quiet the outrage of his fallen audience.
Does it look like you saved them? What happened here?
The Sinestrian militia, their leaders rejected our proposal of union. Their only will is to stay stagnant while opposing armies bolstered their strength. Even as the invaders creep closer.
Who attacked them?
A raiding party from the east. Lies. We had no choice. By your deaths, we can sway Sinestra into combining their power with ours. One fleet under one father. We must take action, even if it's against our own. It was necessary. If we did not, then Aolaos will be taken soon enough. Land's End conspires against the suns. His eyes widen.
How is Land's End involved in this?
They allow soldiers of Sargenia to gather at their ports. They do not appreciate what the suns have sacrificed. They wish ill will to the blooming of Aolaos. They must allow us to inspect their docks. Freely use their ships, or we will take them.
His instinct boils to the brink of reaction. This agenda has set chaos in motion and must be exposed. Roddy's head was the last appendage he could sever, and as if the axe was moving itself, it took it clean. All the bodies return into their slumped stillness. This assembly is over. Vone looks at Reese.
Tell your commanders to go public with the deception of their allies. Tell the people of Sinestra of the casualties they made you conceal. Tell them if they attack Land's End, they will all die.
Reese, still bundled in nerves, takes a minute to stand to his shaking feet.
Go!
He gets into the wagon as Vone sheathes his blade and tosses the chipped man into the back and sees them off. East Aolaos is historically known to be on the defending side of raids. The city blamed the death of Erlo and the burning of the keep on a rebel faction from the other continent. This faction was rumored to be filtering in from Land's End. This was easy persuasion to the people of Sinestra to fund and be recruited as Vanadium. The smaller military under Deandrist, who faithfully protected the capital, was eradicated. The few who were in the city when the massacre occurred switched allegiance to the Suns. They unknowingly paired with their brother's murder for revenge.
I want to thank you for listening to the first episode of the Wraith Redress. Now hear me well, you dogs! I may be dead, but you're not! Become Vanadium! Join our Facebook group at Project FullBlade and enter deeper discussions about the story, music, and rule book. Any questions? Email us at party@projectfullblade.com.